Is it really depressing that this episode can easily be overshadowed when it comes to bad episodes, that Blue becomes so flanderized to the point that you completely forgot everything of how Blue was a likable character in this episode alone? I can really tell that this episode was basically a stepping stone for Blue, but then later on, the stepping stone is completely gone, and the steps that he keeps gaining just ends up gets worse and worse. And I have to say, I really felt really upset that this episode was literally one of the only good episodes involving Blue. The episode begins with Blue becoming jealous that Owalo got on TV, and considering that Blue is the type of person who wants to be in the center of attention, he decides to take matters into his own hands by faking that he got a cold, and managed to become to be part of a news broadcast, and he wants to be up for adoption for everyone, from anyone who is willing to adopt him. And trust me when I say this, when you completely have Blue be in this situation that he put himself into, and the fact that he's starting to become remorse for what he's done in this episode, really makes you feel bad for him in the later seasons, how he gets flanderized so badly. Because the other characters were protecting Blue as long as Mac heads back to Foster's every single day, and no other children can adopt him. But considering that Blue is the type of person who wants some kind of attention, and the fact that he isn't thinking of what the other characters feel about this situation, I can honestly think that his motivations is a lot more better than what his motivations were in the later seasons. Because he wasn't being selfish in this. Yes, he was by faking that he wants to be adopted. However, he wasn't boasting about it. He wasn't completely boasting about the fact that he was on TV. He wasn't even siding with Owalo of the fact that he was also on TV. All he wants is actually just to be in front of a live audience all over the world, which is something that Owalo did on his own, and he's just wanted to take matters into his own hands. If Blue does have hands, that is, because he doesn't have fingers. And this is where we get the introduction of Kip Snip in this episode, and this is the only appearance that he makes. He's basically a Hollywood agent that he'll do everything to make the employer, which is Blue in this case, in order to become way more popular since that he saw Blue on the news. And let's be honest with you, the fact that you could really meet someone who's a Hollywood agent, and the fact that he'll do anything he can just to make you famous over something that you fakishly do in front of so many people, you can really tell that you should probably avoid to be in any of this situation. Granted, it does look good when you think about it, but once you see Kip Snip's true side of himself, you're gonna be fully regretful. Blue agrees with Kip Snip's offer, so he becomes a mascot of Dio Brand's deodorant. And for the majority of this episode, well, mainly the first half of it, he has gotten everything he wants when it comes to the attention that he desires. And after a full day of doing interviews and shooting episodes and commercials, he wants to head back to Foster's, but Kip Snip decides that he doesn't want him to leave because, let's just get this out of the way, the papers that Blue signed was actually adoption papers, so he forces Blue to sleep inside an animal cage. Yeah. Judging by the fact that he doesn't have an apartment for Blue to sleep in during the majority of the night, really goes to show how much of an antagonist he is in this episode alone. The sweet stench of success is one of my favorite episodes from the show. Yes, I finally said it since this week has begun. And when you completely hear me say that this is one of my favorite episodes from a cartoon that I barely watch, that really says how much effort this episode has when it comes to Blue and the other characters. When you see Blue trying to do everything of what a Hollywood star should do, it's honestly an awful lot of work to handle. Believe me when I say this, is that as much as I want to do some of the stuff that can make you become famous, I am fully aware that all the stuff that you have to do isn't really an easy task. Becoming the wrestler in WWE, doing a movie stunt in a movie film that you're the main star of the film, among with other things, is obviously not an easy task. But compared to those when it comes to humans doing that, Blue is an imaginary friend that has no capabilities to do all of this stuff in a short amount of time. And considering that Kip Snip was the one who is actually doing a scheme in order to become successful, really shows that Blue is definitely in the wrong, despite the fact that he puts himself into the situation to begin with. As for Mac in this episode, since that along with the others are mostly upset that Blue was the one who faked the whole code thing to begin with, and then later on he's really happy that he got success, but later on he's really mad at the fact that he won't be able to hang out with Blue, and the fact that he's upset that Blue said nothing to him or does nothing. Sorry, that line that Mac made in this episode was actually humorous to actually think about. Is where we actually get to see some development between him and Blue. And like I said in Barely Scary, it's really amazing to actually see some characters actually helping the development of Blue and Mac. Last was Barely Scary, and now this is Kip Snip, who is just taking advantage of Blue so that he can get more money off of a scam that it's instantly making everyone smell worse in their armpits. It's disgusting that I said that, but that's what deodorant does when it comes to armpits. What I'm saying here is that this episode is really depressing when you completely look at the later episodes of how Blue is flanderized. Seriously, the later episodes really make these episodes instantly forgettable. And when you completely look at episodes that have Blue being flanderized as a selfish jerk who actually wants attention, despite the fact that he actually learned that gaining attention too much can easily make you depressed on missing your best friend so much, is really something that the later episodes never kept notes from this episode. And when I say kept notes, I meant not keeping the information from previous seasons. Especially the scene where we get to see Blue and Mac completely depressed during the night with beautiful music and somewhat flashbacks of the activities that they did together. Trust me when I say this, is that with moments this good, and the fact that later episodes just makes this moment really forgettable and hard to understand the relationship, you need to actually understand that flannerization is a huge issue. Granted, other shows and cartoons don't do this gimmick that much when it comes to trying to have a appropriate arc for the characters, but considering that Foster's is mostly for comedy and it sometimes takes itself seriously on the fact that it's 22 minutes long in almost all the episodes, these moments right here really are pretty much the highlight when it comes to relationships. And then later on, well, we don't get to see much of this in the fact that it's mainly about flannerization and nothing else. It makes this episode instantly into the dark too long, to the point that the newer episodes are always into the light. Because when we get to see that Kip Snip is actually not the same person that Blue thought he was, and he's actually abusive towards him, this is where we get to see that Blue actually does something useful for not only for himself, but also for his friends at Foster's, especially Mac. During the shoots that he makes when it comes to commercials and episodes from other shows, he completely stated that he's being abused by Ken Snip on the fact that he traps him inside of a cage, which actually paranoids Kip Snip. And then he tries to send a code for Mac and the others to find out so that they can rescue him from getting abused on being a mascot of a deodorant company. Because let's be honest, if anyone was ever in this situation, I can guarantee you that there's gonna be a lot of consequences when it comes to people working on these advertisement and commercials. Well, not really every single person, but one in particular. And while Mac and the others try to get in the studio to save Blue, Blue sings a song that Kip Snip wrote so he can embarrass himself, but also put him in punishment. Yeah, can you really tell how Kip Snip is a really unlikable douchebag, and that douchebag actually deserves to be arrested at the end of the episode? Really sums up on how much you can actually think about when you look at episodes that were good in the 2000s. As for the musical number that we hear Blue sing in this episode, while the other characters try to stop the extras from preventing him to escape, I could say that it's really entertaining. This episode did have a few musical numbers sung by Blue, but compared to those musical numbers, this was actually kind of an entertaining way to have the other characters shine by saving Blue from being in this predicament for the rest of his life. Let's just say that if an imaginary friend was in this situation, he would still feel the same way Blue is feeling in this entire episode, if they don't seek attention, that is. And when Blue punched Kip to the face and completely had enough of being an advertisement of a deodorant brand, you can really tell that he really has every right to it, because he even told the audience that the deodorant doesn't make everyone smell better. And now, furious rage from Kip Snip, he actually said that the deodorant makes people smell worse. Yeah, he completely said that in front of an audience, especially all over the world on TV. Whenever I see this scene, this instantly reminds me of Princess Marbucks from the Powerpuff Girls, just desperately getting what she wants, and she doesn't care about any consequences that comes in her way. Considering that Kip Snip is basically the Princess Marbucks of this show when it comes to him becoming a Hollywood agent and famous, despite the fact that Marbucks is famous but not a Hollywood agent, it's really good to actually see him get his comeuppance. As far as I'm concerned, this is basically an episode that no other famous person, despite being really good, should never do what Kip Snip did in this episode alone. Granted, they're far more talented and this is a cartoon, but at the same time, this is what ended up happening if you were in this Hollywood agent's footsteps. And the episode ends with Blue waiting and Eduardo completely saying potatoes, and that actually shocks everyone. Then again, he actually got on TV at the beginning of the episode and he faces fear of screen fright or stage fright, whatever you prefer it, so I honestly think that the ending is really justified. This episode is really good, whether you like the relationship between Mac and Blue, and it's such a shame that in the later episodes, the finalization from Blue just gets a lot more complicated for people to handle. If anything, if you like this show in the later seasons when it comes to the other characters, that's a good thing. But considering the fact that Blue is one of the main characters in this show, and the fact that he gets flannelized, honestly makes his appearance in this episode retcon. And it's something that no other cartoon should do, whether it's needed or not. And in this case, it's completely unneeded. When an episode gets retconned by episodes in the future that it's mostly unintentional, then you can really tell that this episode is honestly really disappointing, whether you completely look at the later episodes. And that is saying something, whether if you watch the entire series and you look at episodes like this, of how the later episodes just change everything. Believe me, if this was actually a month instead of a week involving Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, I would have talked about multiple episodes involving Blue in the earlier seasons, but this is literally the best I can do, and doing 7 reviews is just way too complicated, so that's why I'm doing 5. Anyway, I give this episode an 8.5 out of 10. There's only 2 more episodes left to culminate this week, and I'm getting to the worst episode I'm going to be reviewing. And it's a request that people want me to review to be part of Cartoon Crisis 2, but better late than never, I guess.
Let's get this started again. Me and my whole crew, we live with no rules. Let's get this started again. So if you feel like me too, there's only one thing to do. Let's go. Pay down, call the taxi cab. Got a case in the fridge and a bottle at the crib. Let's all get twisted, double fisting, drink up no resisting. Let's get this started again. Let's get this started again. Let's get this